campaign. And persecution of birds of prey in the Yorkshire Dales came out by far as where people thought we should focus. And we believe that on this topic and here in the Dales, we can uniquely make a difference by shining a light on the black spot that the Yorkshire Dales National Park is for the criminal killing of birds of prey. Alongside the campaign, as we continue our change in directions, we're embracing new voices and different perspectives. And it's been really exciting that we've had a lot of involvement of younger people in designing this campaign and our ongoing work, which is really exciting. So to the campaign, why campaign on this? As I said earlier, it's about shining a light on the black spot that is the Dales. But our campaign specifically is aimed at raising awareness of the awe and majesty of birds of prey, especially the 6 chosen species, why they're so vital to a healthy ecosystem, but also the awfulness of why they continue to be persecuted in the Yorkshire Dales area. But I guess more importantly, which is something I'm sure people are interested in, is how this campaign can help us and help you spot and report any crime. We're working very closely with some key partners, and all those partners are much more expertly placed on the specifics of this topic than we are, and we will continue to work with them and draw on their expertise. The RSPB, the UK National Wildlife Crime Unit, Yorkshire Dales National Park Authority, and Hen Harrier Action. And so to the goals of our campaign, and as we start this campaign and embark on it, we're firming up on the things that we want to look at. But I wanted to share them and welcome people's views as we build this campaign. Firstly, better national recording of wildlife crime, technically making the crimes notifiable, as currently they're often classed as miscellaneous, like things like littering, which isn't appropriate. Secondly, better understanding amongst magistrates of the seriousness of persecution of birds of prey, and linked to that harsher penalties so there's more deterrence to criminals. And again, more awareness of how people can spot and report crime when out and about in the countryside. And on a bigger scale, political change, we'll certainly be highlighting the calls that others are making for introducing licensing again for the game bird shooting industry, following the lead of what's happened in Scotland. So we welcome your views and your continued support and donations to help us with this really important campaign, the importance of which I think is reflected in the interest in tonight's webinar. And further to tonight's events, we've got more events planned going forward. The next event is either the 25th or 26th of November, and we'd welcome any suggestions if anyone knows of an organisation or speaker who might be able to contribute as we design the next and further events. So again, please drop Victoria a line if you have any thoughts on that. And so that's my introduction, Friends of the Dales, about why we're campaigning, but now to the heart of the topic, and over to Kate Jennings, who's going to talk us through it.
Thank you very much. Right, I'm nervous now that Victoria said the glitches are over. We have to. We're now at the point where we see if that's true as I try and share my presentation. Let's see how this goes. Can you see that? Because I now can't see you. Victoria, can you see that?
Yeah, sorry, I just sent you a text, but yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, hello, and many thanks to Friends of the Dales for their kind invitation to speak at this launch of the new Eyes on the Skies campaign. I should say at the outset, I have included a video in my presentation. Fingers crossed that works, but if not, you're going to be getting your next cup of tea a little sooner than you thought. So a bit about me. My job involves trying to get the best places for nature protected and well managed, and also to secure the protection and recovery of species across the UK. And it's sad to say that one of the issues that consumes much of my time, like that of my predecessors over the decades, is the illegal killing of birds of prey. And as a resident of the Dales, I, like many of you, live in a persecution hotspot. So I'm guessing most of you will have come across the RSPB, and some of you may even have worked or volunteered for the RSPB. But for any who haven't, I just thought I'd do a quick intro. So the RSPB was established in 1889 by a bunch of feisty women, and they came together to fight a fashion for feathers that was driving birds like little egrets, great crested grebes, and birds of paradise towards extinction. The RSPB is now the largest nature conservation charity in Europe, and we are the partner of BirdLife, an organisation that brings together the RSPB and its equivalents in countries across the globe. We have over 1 million members, so that's more than the membership of all of the UK's main political parties combined. And we have about 1,500 staff, that now includes men as well as feisty women. And our staff are well outnumbered by our volunteers, of which there's around 14,000. We don't just do birds, but we approach our work and the world through a bird's eye view. We do quite a lot of science. We provide advice to farmers and to other land managers and to businesses. And we also manage over 200 nature reserves across the UK. In addition, we work elsewhere around the world. For example, we manage a couple of rainforests in Sierra Leone and Sumatra. We aim to tackle the threats that nature faces both at home and abroad by understanding the drivers of decline, testing solutions, and advocating for the changes that we need to see in both policy and practice if we're to halt and reverse the decline in nature and also to tackle the climate crisis. And the climate crisis is, of course, one of the main drivers of the loss of biodiversity. The policy and advocacy bit is where I come in. My team work with our scientists, our ecologists, and our reserve managers to turn our research and our practical experience into policy. And then I work with colleagues who cover other areas like farming and forestry, marine and climate to try to make the case for change to governments across the UK. Doing that often means working closely with partners. That includes, for example, the Campaign for National Parks, of which Friends for the Dales is a member, as well as people like the Nature Friendly Farming Network and the National Wildlife Crime Unit. And finally, I also work closely with the RSPB's investigations team, who have the unenviable but vital task of tracking down and exposing those who commit bird crime. And they work closely with the police and with other authorities. So a bit about the long history of bird of prey persecution. They've been persecuted in the UK for many centuries. We've got records in Scotland going back to the 15th century. Many have been targeted as their predators of small mammals, of fish and game. Some of them are far more scavenger than predator, although that hasn't meant that they've been spared. And some are a combination of the two. Now, bird of prey killing peaked during the Victorian times, which saw the widespread intensification of game bird shooting as a commercial sport. Here, both the inventors of the breech loading shotgun and indeed of trains have got quite a lot to answer for. With that came pressure to drive the numbers of game birds, so that's things like pheasants and red grouse, to ever higher levels. And it also meant the employment of gamekeepers whose main job was to control the natural predators of those game birds. This, combined with the effects of things like skin and egg collecting and of habitat change, saw heavily persecuted birds of prey species wiped out across vast areas of the UK. By the late 19th century, goshawks were extinct in the UK as a result of persecution and deforestation. By 1905, red kites were extinct in England, Scotland and Northern Ireland, with a tiny population hanging on in Wales. And the last British white-tailed sea eagle was shot on the Shetland Isles in 1918. Now, the two world wars cut birds of prey some slack because gamekeepers, like so many men of their generation, left to fight the wars. Those species that had not already been driven to extinction in the UK began to colonise their old haunts, expanding both their ranges and increasing in numbers, although, of course, the effect of the wars was relatively short-lived, for birds of prey at least. Birds of prey finally got legal protection for the first time in 1954 with the introduction of the Protection of Birds Act. And in the words of one paper I read, it said that that act came into force long after those who originally conceived it and had died of old age or of frustration. The introduction of that protection, growing public interest in conservation, and changing public attitudes did reduce the rates of killing. Some species like buzzards have increased in numbers and they've recolonised parts of their range from which they'd previously been exterminated. Some others previously wiped out across some or all of their range in Britain have benefited from some highly successful reintroduction projects. So that includes red kites, white-tailed sea eagles and golden eagles. And yet, despite 70 years of protection, the now very illegal killing of birds of prey continues. The map on the right is taken from the RSPB's 2023 bird crime report and shows the locations of almost all of the 1,003 confirmed bird of prey persecution incidents that took place between 2013 and 2022 in the UK. That includes the continued illegal killing of species like buzzard, which have expanded their range despite the pressure of persecution, the killing of those that have only been returned through those reintroduction projects, like the white-tailed sea eagles, and also the killing of those populations who remain in a perilous state as a result of so many decades of persecution. So, a bit about the hen harrier. This is one of the species which remains in a really perilous state as a result of ongoing persecution. Hen harriers are birds of the uplands in the summer, where they nest on the ground, and often of coastal marshes in the winter. They've got long wings, which are perfectly designed for quartering the ground in search of their prey, and that's generally meadow pipits, voles, and other small mammals. But, as their name suggests, they are known to have a go at larger prey. It's mainly the brown, so-called ring-tailed females that have a go at larger prey, because as is often the case with birds of prey, the females are considerably larger than the males. Those males are a slaty grey, and that's the name of the ghost of the moors. Now, the courtship of these birds involves the incredible spectacle of sky dancing, in which the male performs these sort of amazing tumbling aerial acrobatics in his bid to attract a mate. And their pair bonds are often strengthened with elaborate aerial food passes from the male to the female. Once their 4 or 5 eggs are laid and then the chicks hatch, the male provisions the female and the young at the nest. These birds are beautiful. They are iconic of our upland landscapes, and of those birds of prey that remain, they are the most heavily persecuted. So I talked earlier about the declines through the Victorian era, and by the early 20th century, hen harriers survived only at the very extreme edges of their range in the Scottish Highlands and Islands. And they remain a red-listed species of conservation concern today. The last national survey of hen harrier across the UK was carried out in 2023, and it estimated that there are now 653 territorial pairs. So that raises the question of how many hen harriers there should be if all was well. And for this species, we don't have this for them all, but for this species, we do have an answer. In 2011, an independent government report found that there was sufficient suitable habitat for the UK to hold around 2,500 pairs of hen harriers, and that England could hold over 300 of those. So the national survey shows that the UK population is at about 25% of its potential size. Natural England data for this spring suggests there were 39 breeding attempts in England. Compare that to the 300 pairs that suitable habitat in England could support. Now we're going to come back to why that is, but first I'm going to talk a bit about the illegal and inhumane methods that are used to kill birds of prey, and also what we know about how and where that happens. So there are, of course, many forms of bird crime, and that includes illegal trade, taking of eggs and wild young. But for the purposes of today, I'll be focusing on illegal killing, which in the majority of cases involves birds being trapped, poisoned, or shot. There are a range of types of traps. Some are illegal, others can be legally used to target certain species, but trapping a bird of prey by any means is illegal. Hole traps is a picture here, bottom left, placed on the top of fence posts and other perches and triggered when a bird's lands. Those have been illegal in the UK since 1904. But, for example, they're often found when targeting birds of prey close to pheasant release pens. Spring traps can be legally used, but only in covered runs and to target small mammals. Our investigations team have been involved in several incidents where birds of prey have been caught in spring traps illegally used in the open. And these birds, like those caught in pole traps, are often recovered having died of the injuries sustained. Then there's larson traps and the larger ladder or crow cage traps, which can be used legally under the general license to target crow species, crows and magpies, for example. The way they work is they're baited with a live bird, which attracts others into an adjoining capture compartment from which they are then unable to escape. Both are sometimes illegally used to catch birds of prey, and over the years we've gathered covert footage showing birds of prey either being removed from these traps and bagged, presumably to be killed elsewhere, or being clubbed to death inside traps. The picture top left is a screenshot from covert filming by the RSPB's investigation team, showing a gamekeeper who was seen bludgeoning 2 buzzards to death in a cage trap in Nottinghamshire in 2021. Footage that I'm pleased to say did result in his conviction. And the bird on the right is a golden eagle found dead in Deeside in 2012 with 2 broken legs, consistent with having been caught in a spring trap. Now we come to poisons. It's illegal to lay poisoned baits in the open, but as many past incidents and convictions have shown, this is another practice that's regularly used to kill birds of prey. Typically, a bird or a rabbit carcass or a piece of meat is laced with poison and then placed in open areas where birds of prey and other species may look for food. And many of the perpetrators use such high concentrations of these toxic substances that we find birds of prey generally die within minutes of consuming the bait. This practice is, of course, wholly indiscriminate, meaning that it poses a threat to other wildlife and animals. That does, of course, include domestic cats and dogs, amongst others. Now, 43% of all confirmed birds of prey persecution incidents recorded between 2000 and 2022 were poison related. And that includes the poisoning of over 900 birds of prey. That included white-tailed sea eagles, golden eagles, red kites, buzzards, sparrowhawks, and peregrines, all dying after ingesting poison. The picture on the left is 9 poisoned buzzards that were recovered during a raid on a Norfolk pheasant shooting estate in 2013. And the picture on the right is a white-tailed sea eagle found poisoned in Dorset in 2022. Between 2000 and 2022, over 800 birds of prey were confirmed as being deliberately shot including shorted owls, hen harriers, peregrines, red kites, goshawks, and golden eagles. And the picture here is an X-ray of one of 2 short-eared owls, which were shot on the Whernside estate in 2017. Right, now wish us luck, because here is where we try the video. So the incident in which that short-eared owl died on the Whernside estate was observed by the RSPB investigations team, who were working in the field and managed to capture it on film. I have to apologise for one of my geographically illiterate colleagues on the voiceover who says in the video that Whernside is in Cumbria. It is, of course, not in Cumbria, it's in Yorkshire. What follows is not an easy watch, but it shows the lengths that some will go to kill birds of prey, the lengths my colleagues and the police have to go to catch them, and also the really pathetic sentences that are handed down, even in a case where the evidence is so clearly compelling. Right, I'm going to press play and let's hope this works.
The short-eared owl, a beautiful and rare breeding bird of our uplands. The RSPB has received detailed allegations of the intensive persecution of this bird on grouse moors. In April 2017, 3 RSP investigators happened to be present when 2 owls were shot on Whernside Moor in Cumbria. Following the shooting of the first bird, the offender hid the body in a dry stone wall.
Yeah, he's putting rocks on top of it.
But I've got 1357 on the camcorder. Is that accurate?
Yeah, 1357.
Yeah, so it's about 2 minutes ago. So
He's just put some rocks on top of it. He's now picked up his gun and walking away from it.
Okay, Tim, give us a description of what happened while it's fresh in your memory.
So he was walking along, a short-eared owl flushed approximately 30 yards in front of him.
Yep.
He then fired a shot. The owl fell to the ground and was still flapping. He then walked approximately 5 more yards, fired another shot. The owl was still flapping. He then walked along, got on top of the owl, put his foot on it, grabbed it by its wings, and then walked along approximately another 40 yards or so to the wall. Got to the wall, seemed to place the owl against the wall, presumably stomped. Then you can see his feet stomping against, presumably the owl against the wall. And he then put his gun down, picked up the owl again, put it against the wall, and then proceeded to place rocks on top of the owl. And then picked up his gun and walked away.
A short while later, a second owl was seen shot, and the offender, over 2.5 kilometres away, was filmed carrying the body and then repeatedly stamping it into the ground. One RSPB officer remained at the observation point. The second went to meet the police down in the valley. The third made his way to an access point onto the moor and was able to covertly film local gamekeeper Tim Cowan negotiating the gate as he left the scene of the owl shootings. However, at this point it is believed Cowan spotted the police vehicles in the valley below. Filming from the observation point, Cowan can be seen walking across the turning area to get a better view into the valley. At this point, he met the RSP officer who had the camcorder still running and recorded the conversation.
Hello, Tim.
Alright.
You're going to wait here?
Hello, what?
You're going to wait here, Tim, isn't it? You're going to have to wait here, Tim. Tim? Tim? Yeah, I'm with the suspect now. He's caught me behind the wall. Can you get the police up here at the front so he's walking back onto the moor?
Keep walking back onto the wall.
Yeah, I'm going to follow him. Yeah, he's looking back to us. So I'm going to follow him. Can you get here at the front? Ken! Ken, police are on the way! Ken!
The police arrived a few minutes later, by which time Cowan had doubled back and was walking back towards his vehicle. Two North Yorkshire police officers and an RSPB officer intercepted Cowan, who was arrested and searched and taken away from the scene. The vehicle Cowan had abandoned was searched.
For the purpose of the tape, it's 16:31 hours. The rear side door of the vehicle's been opened. This is just a quick video of the interior. We have a firearm laid out on the rear seat. And on the floor we have a plastic peregrine decoy. There's a camouflage hood. Fox Pro calling device.
Police and RSPB then made their way to the area on the moor where the first owl was shot.
For the purpose of the tape, this is a section of dry stone wall. I have a couple of what appear to be raptor feathers here. And on this stone, what's possibly blood. There appears to be a tiny feather there as well.
Do you want to photograph the shrub before we...
Officer 803 Michael Carr has drawn our attention to a position in the wall 2 metres from where we originally searched where the blood and the feathers were, having pulled back some rocks. Having pulled back some rocks, we've got...
cartridges of blood.
Got a talon and a feathered leg, which would be consistent with a shorted owl, which we'll see in a moment. Okay. Can you just turn it so it's got the belly up with the underwings towards on, so just see the underwings out, so see the underwings. Yeah, so I can confirm this is definitely a short-eared owl.
Due to fading light, it was not possible to find the second owl, and a return was made the following afternoon.
For the purpose of the tape, the time is 17:24 hours, Thursday the 20th of April 2017. This is a continuation of the search from yesterday, looking for a second corpse of a short-eared owl. We're out on highland short moss. The view I'm looking here is back towards the observation point, and my colleague Howard Jones and Sergeant Kelly are on the far ridge line giving us some directions. They have directed us into this location, and on the ground here we've noticed a number of feathers which look consistent with short-eared owl. Numerous feathers here. There's what appears to be a line of footprints in the moss, in the vegetation in that direction. And then swinging around to this side, we followed what appears to be a line of footprints here and one or two additional feathers to an area where the footprints appear to end, where Tim Jones and PC Carr stood. Okay, off you go. For the purpose of the tape, 17:31. We believe we found the body of the bird. Tim Jones is taking video, the officer is now recovering it. A few good 10 seconds.
Yeah, Mick, just confirmation, you're right on top of that area now. Yeah, we found it. Good effort, mate.
Extremely well stamped upon. It's clearly either a short-eared or a long-eared owl from the breast. Yeah, it's a short-eared owl.
Before leaving, the rock where the first owl had been stamped on the previous day was recovered. Forensic testing by the Sasa laboratory in Scotland confirmed the presence of short-eared owl DNA. Post-mortem examinations confirmed both birds were shot and also had bone fractures, no doubt from being stamped on.
So I think that video really speaks for itself, particularly when you read the penalties that were applied at the end of all of that. So next I'm going to talk about what we know about the scale of bird of prey persecution problem, about who the perpetrators are, and about the places where it happens. The RSPB's bird crime publications provide the only comprehensive reports on bird of prey persecution across the UK. And we only report confirmed cases. So that's those which have been corroborated and evidenced through various means, including post-mortem examinations, toxicology analysis, eyewitness accounts, video evidence, and police-led investigations. Our 2023 report provided a 15-year review of illegal killing between 2009 and 2023. Over those 15 years, there were just over 1,500 confirmed cases of bird of prey persecution in the UK. That included 506 shootings, 229 trappings, and 641 poisoning incidents. The birds those incidents related to included buzzards, red kites, peregrines. However, this is by no means a measure of how many cases of raptor persecution have actually taken place. So, as that video actually nicely illustrates, these incidents often take place in remote and inaccessible areas where they go undiscovered and unreported. And so the number of confirmed cases are very much the tip of the iceberg. While, as I said, there were just over 1,500 confirmed cases between 2009 and 2023, there were almost 5,500 probable and unconfirmed incidents. Now, those in turn will only be a fraction of the number of cases that go unreported and or undiscovered. And right now, even in the case of confirmed incidents, the chances of perpetrators being caught is low. There were only 62 prosecutions over those 15 years, and they in turn resulted in 57 convictions. So that means we're getting about one successful conviction per 27 confirmed cases. And even when someone is convicted, the penalties are far from dissuasive. Of those 57 convictions, 51 resulted in non-custodial sentences, 5 people got a suspended sentence, and only 1 individual actually went to jail. Nobody has ever been convicted of hen harrier persecution related offences in England. So the chances of detection are low, the chances of being caught red-handed are even lower, and if you do get caught, the punishments are pretty pathetic. And while we have developed new and innovative ways of tracking the fates of some birds of prey, as with all criminal activity, perpetrators soon get wise to new techniques and they adapt their behaviour accordingly. In 2021, the satellite tag that had been fitted to a 1-year-old female harrier, who was known as Asta, suddenly moved from a grouse moor in the North Pennines, where she had been roosting, to another location in North Yorkshire, and then it stopped moving. A land search was done by Natural England field workers, and they found her tag harnessed to a dead carrion crow. Asta must have died before or soon after her tag was removed, because these tags are attached with a harness, and that harness was intact and subsequently fitted to the then living crow. And that harness could not have been removed intact without Asta suffering severe injuries. Satellite tagging of birds of prey at the nest has undoubtedly been a game changer in terms of developing our understanding of the fate of these birds, where, when, and how they die. Of the 206 hen harriers fitted with satellite tags by the RSPB since 2014, 74 have been confirmed or are suspected to have been the victim of persecution. That's about 35%. But to assume that that is representative of what happens to all of the hen harriers is to assume that the fate of tagged harriers is similar to the fate of those which are not tagged. And a recent case, which is currently going through the courts and very close to home, clearly demonstrates that that may not be the case. In October last year, Channel 4 broadcast footage and audio of a group of gamekeepers out on a moor at dusk. Many of you will have seen it, and if you haven't, it's there on YouTube if you want to. The footage shows, and it also records, the voices of a group of keepers. They discuss the approach of one hen harrier, but when they identify it as a bird with a box, in other words, a satellite tagged bird, one man instructs another to fire shots to scare it off. On the video, you see a man rise from the vegetation with a gun. He moves off screen, and then you hear multiple shots off camera. Later, they see another harrier, and one man instructs another to check if it is clean, i.e. if it's a bird without a tag. And if it is, to kill it. Again, you see one of the keepers get up from the vegetation with his gun. As he moves off screen, you hear a single shot, and then he's seen returning, at which point he's congratulated for killing the bird. Now, at the time of broadcast, the location of this footage was not released. It was the subject of an ongoing police investigation. But now that this case is going through the courts, the location has been publicly identified as the Coniston and Grassing estate in the Yorkshire Dales National Park. So if you hear some claim that how tagged harriers fare suggests that these birds are maybe doing better than the RSP and others might suggest, remember that the tagged birds may be more likely to survive than those that don't have tags. So now, identifying those who carry out these crimes. Not all perpetrators are gamekeepers, and not all gamekeepers are perpetrators. However, the RSPB's data shows that at least 54% of all confirmed persecution incidents over the 10 years from 2014 to 2023 were linked to land managed for pheasant, partridge and grouse shooting. And of all the individuals convicted of bird of prey persecution related offences between 2029 and 2023, 75% were connected to the game bird industry and 68% were gamekeepers. Now, gamekeeping routinely involves the legal removal of predatory birds like carrion crows and predators like foxes, but it's clear that some individuals do illegally kill birds of prey to eliminate all potential predation on game birds in an attempt to maximise the number that are left to be shot for sport and for profit. I mentioned earlier that of the 206 hen harriers that we fitted with satellite tags since 2014, 74% have been confirmed or are suspected to have been the victims of persecution. 85% of those incidents took place on or near land managed for grouse shooting. And satellite tag data has also allowed new scientific analysis, both by RSPB conservation scientists and by others. This has shown us that for hen harriers, annual survival is low, especially among birds under 1 year. Got about 14% of males and 30% of females making it through their first year. The average life expectancy of a young hen harrier post-fledging is just 121 days. Illegal killing accounts for the deaths of between 27 and 41% of birds under 1 year old. And illegal killing is the main cause of death for older birds, accounting for up to 75% of yearly deaths in birds between the ages of 1 and 2. Now, we don't have a figure for the percentage of deaths for birds older than 2, and that's because not enough birds survive that long to be able to come up with a statistically significant result, which in itself is a pretty appalling fact. The RSPB-led analysis also found that mortality due to illegal killing is highest in areas managed for grouse shooting, and that a 10% increase in grouse moor use by the birds was associated with a 43% increase in the rate of mortality. And that's supported by other analysis undertaken by Natural England, which has found that hen harriers are 10 times more likely to die or disappear in areas that are predominantly covered by grouse moor compared to areas that are not managed for grouse. So if we look at the places where these events happen, if we look at rates for all species, then the bulk of confirmed birds of prey persecution incidents across the UK have occurred in England. And given the strong link between illegal bird of prey persecution and areas managed for shooting, it's no surprise that areas where there's a significant amount of shooting feature really strongly when we look at the persecution hotspots. And based on data for the 15 years from 2009 to 2023, North Yorkshire is by far and away the hottest of the hotspots, with 185 confirmed persecution incidents over that 15-year period. And I suspect you can all spot the Skipton and Ripon area on the map on the right, which is a heat map of raptor persecution incidents by constituency, which we produced for an MP briefing last year. If we look at hen harriers, where they're persecuted in particular, then the scale of the problem that we face here in the Dales becomes even more clear. This year, the RSPB published its hen harriers in the firing line report. Of the 102 confirmed and suspected hen harrier persecution incidents between 2020 and 2024, 89% took place in Northern England, and the bulk of those were in the protected landscapes, which includes the Yorkshire Dales National Park and the North Pennines National Landscape, AONB in old money. These places have also seen the most significant declines in hen harrier breeding over the last couple of years, with the number of nesting attempts in the Dales in 2024 down 73% on the previous year. And while recent data published by Natural England shows that in 2025, breeding attempts in England rose from 34 to 39, there were very few nests recorded in the places where the habitat would lead you to think there should be nests, the North Pennines, the Yorkshire Dales and the Nidderdale area. And indeed, the only nests that there were in the North Pennines were at the RSPB's Geltsdale Reserve. So now our last couple of Dales case studies. So beginning on the left, in 2020, a male hen harrier called Free was fitted with a satellite tag by Natural England. In 2022, his tag data showed that he'd settled in an area of moorland near Birkdale on the Yorkshire-Cumbria border. Concerns were raised when Free's tag data showed that he had moved away from his normal roosting area. Natural England field workers subsequently recovered his body and tag from a rocky slope above Alfgill. His head and one of his legs were missing. The post-mortem examination concluded that Free's leg had been torn off while he was alive and that the cause of death was the head being twisted and pulled off. Needless to say, it concluded that those injuries were consistent with him being killed by human hands. More recently, in 2024, young Sita, on the right, was fitted with a satellite tag by the RSPB investigations team before she fledged from a nest in the Forest of Bowland. Her tag had been funded by Hen Harrier Action, and it showed that she'd settled at a wintering site on moorland between Reeth and Redmire. Concerns were raised about Sita when her tag suddenly stopped transmitting on the 27th of February this year, sadly indicating that it was likely Sita had been killed. Despite a police investigation being launched, neither Sita nor her tag have ever been found, and almost 6 months after her tag stopped transmitting, North Yorkshire Police and the National Wildlife Crime Unit have confirmed that there are no further lines of inquiry for them to pursue in this case. So, after 70 years of legal protection and illegal persecution, this remains a very real issue, slowing the recovery of some species and continuing to risk the extinction of others. So change is needed, and it's needed now. And that's what makes the Friends of the Dales Eyes on the Skies campaign here in the midst of the worst county in the UK for rat persecution both so welcome and so timely. So the question is, what change would help? Clearly, things like higher penalties for those who are convicted of illegal killing might provide an added deterrent, as would the ability to prosecute landowners and employers for the actions of their employees, so-called vicarious liability. Because at the moment, there's no penalty for a landowner who pressurises their staff to kill birds of prey, only for those staff if they get caught. But that doesn't help with the fact that so few of these crimes, even when discovered, result in successful criminal convictions, and it really doesn't address the scale of this problem. So more systemic change is needed, and as the evidence is clear that the shooting industry is the biggest driver of illegal killing, that's the obvious place to focus. The illegal killing of birds of prey is just one of a number of damaging practices, some illegal, some legal, that are associated with intensive management of land for grouse shooting. Those include burning of vegetation over peat soils, the construction of vehicle tracks and butts, all of which damage and degrade our peatlands and their ability to retain water and to sequester carbon. Then there's widespread use of toxic lead ammunition, poorly regulated use of veterinary medications, amongst others. And then some, of course, also have concerns about the high levels of legal predator control from a welfare perspective. That has led some to call for a ban on driven grouse shooting. That is, of course, opposed by the industry and also by those who see grouse moor management as part of the cultural heritage of the uplands, albeit that the intensive management we see today has little to do with past cultural practices. However, a ban has been repeatedly ruled out by successive Westminster governments, including the current one. Now, where the RSPB comes from on this, we're a conservation rather than a welfare organisation, and our charter, our charitable objects, require that we take a neutral stance on the ethics of field sports. So we only speak out when shooting, or indeed any other industry, is doing harm to nature conservation. That is clearly the case when it comes to illegal killing of birds of prey. And we favour an approach that would require all shoots across the 4 countries of the UK to be licensed. And licensing was also, in fact, a recommendation of a report that the UK government's commissioned from the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime. Now, in Scotland, as was mentioned in the introduction, working with a range of other partners, it's something that we have now managed to secure for grouse shooting, and in Scotland only. In simple terms, the way this works is that by requiring all grouse shoots to have a licence, you make retention of that licence conditional on complying not only with the law, but also with relevant codes of good practice. And then any breach of the law or of those codes can be addressed with sanctions up to and including the withdrawal of the licence. That means that any shoot that is associated with the illegal killing of a bird of prey, or illegal or inappropriate burning, or any of those other things, could stand to lose their licence to operate, and with that lose their business. Now, shoot operators who have nothing to hide should have nothing to fear from such an approach. It's just about complying with the existing law and following good practice. And the same logic can be applied to pheasant, partridge and mallard shoots. These 2 kinds of shooting have the illegal killing of birds of prey in common. The other negative impacts are different, but the same solution should work. It's early days in Scotland, where the licensing of grouse moors was only introduced last year. The onus is on governments and the shooting community to show that licensing can work, and that's going to require robust monitoring and enforcement of sanctions. Should they fail to make it work and to deliver the recovery of birds of prey populations, then a ban is going to be the only tenable alternative. So, what can you do to help? Well, keep your eyes on the skies and do support the Friends of the Dales campaign. We need you to raise awareness of the sheer scale and severity of the illegal killing of birds of prey, and to let others know you care, preferably including your MP. If you see or suspect illegal activity, then you should always keep yourself safe. You should record any evidence that you can safely. You should call the police, 999 for a crime in progress, 101 if it's not an emergency. And in cases of suspected poisoning, then you should also call the Government Wildlife Incident Investigations Team. And I should add as well, obviously, that if a wildlife crime involves animal cruelty, then you can also call the RSPCA. For more advice, you can visit the RSPB's website, where we've got guidance on what to do if you witness a wildlife crime. You'll be relieved to hear that's it from me. Thank you very much, and I will stop sharing so that I can see you all.